Okay, Hannah's going to shift up to the highest gear. I'm going to lift the rear wheel up and pedal around so the gears dropped down into the highest gear. So to remove the wheel, you also need to disconnect the brakes. I'm going to pull the silver noodle and push on the brake arm, and then that should slide out there and pop open. It's normally just a quick release lever like this. The brakes, you're going to push the brake arm in and pull the cable stop out. So Hannah is going to turn the bike upside down. So she's going to grab the front of the fork at the bottom and right down at the bottom in the frame and just flip it towards her and upside down. So if you've got nuts like these, you're going to need a spanner to remove the wheel. And I think quite carefully about what position I put the spanner in, because I really want to be able to use my body weight to open it. If I put it in this position, I'm going to have to like push. But if I pop it here, I can just put a straight arm and just lean down on it, and then I'm not having to strain my body. So just loosen them up, don't take them off completely, and same again on the other side. In the downward positions, left it loosey, and there we go. Got a lever like this, you should just be able to pull it open, and then you might want to give it a couple twists on the other side, and then that should be loose enough for you. Once the wheel nuts are loosened, I'm going to grab hold of the wheel, and then I'm just going to move the derailleur out of the way like this, and then pull the wheel up, and then unhook the chain, got a wheel. If you've got a puncture, the air will be out your tyre already, but if you wanted to change your tyres, for example, you'll need to let the air out first. If you've got a Schrader valve or car valve like this one, you can press the pin in the middle with your fingernail or with any sort of tool you've got to hand. So this is a Presta valve. You just want to unscrew the top, and then to get the air out you press down, and you want to do that until all the air comes out. So you just keep pressing it, you can hold it down, and then when you want to tighten it back up to stop the air coming out, screw it back up, lefty loosey righty tighty, and that's that. So once the air is out, or if you've got puncture the air is out already, then we want to get the tyre off. So we use my tyre levers. These come in different widths, different materials, different shapes, but they all have the same function. They normally have a little ramp and a little hook. So I'm going to get two at a time and use the ramped edge. And I'm going to pull the tyre back, slot the ramp under one side of the tyre, and then use my other tyre lever about one tyre lever length away, and pop that in, and then I'm going to pull them over at the same time. So this is especially helpful if you've got really tight, skinny fitting tyres, then you can get a bit more leverage. So, and then together I'm going to pull that over, lock one of them into place with a hook, remove this one, just move along a little way, pop it in again, pop it open, and at some point I can just slide all the way around. So this is quite a baggy fitting tyre, so it makes it feel quite easy. This off, I'm going to remove the tube from the inside. So some people don't know that there is actually a tube inside. It's just like a big balloon really. And then the last thing to come out is the valve. So just give myself some space. Hello Bumblebee. And then wiggle that out. Now I'm going to try and keep track of what position I took the tube out of, because then if I find where my puncture is on the tube, I can quite quickly then find where cores might be on the tyre. First thing, I want to find where the hole in my tube is. Even if I'm putting a new tube in and not patching this one, it's still really helpful to find the hole and to remove the cores. Got a couple of different pumps here. You can get lots of different types of pumps. This one's really handy. It kind of pulls out long, and then you just use the thread the head onto the tube like that. This one here has got like a valve that means it can take Presta or Schrader, or with other types of pumps you've actually just got to physically change it around for the different valve types. So I'm going to pump this up. Right, so I want to get the tube so it's really nice and fat. It makes it much easier to find the puncture. I'm going to take my pump off. I'm going to take my gloves off for this because I want my sensitive fingers, and I'm also going to use my lips and my face, and I sort of bunch it up, go around like this until I can feel a bit of air on my face. It's much harder to do outside because you've also got wind and stuff. So this one's got an old patch, and oh yeah, you probably won't be able to hear it, but I can hear a hissing. So someone's put a patch in this, but for some reason or another it hasn't worked. So I'm going to rip it off. And that's the original hole there. Once I found the puncture, I'm going to make a nice big X marks the spot, and I'm even going to do a little like square around that as well. And then I'm going to make sure that all of the air is definitely out of the tube. And I'm going to get my sandpaper, and I'm just going to rough up that area, and it will make the solution that we're going to use to glue it, it will make it stick a lot better. And sometimes you find that you've actually sanded off your X, but I can just about make it out again. Then I'm going to select a patch. Normally the smaller the better really, then there's less leakage. So I've got this tiny little one there. And then I've got my puncture solution stuff. And with these types you take off the foil, so it's just the width of the orange bit and then a little bit wider that you want to cover with glue. So pop some of this on, nice thin layer, and then I just need to hold tight a little while. So I'd use this minute or two just to see if I can find the puncture, what caused the puncture. So if we remember, I took the tube out like this, and the wheel was like this, and the valve hole is here, and the puncture is there. So I'm looking in around this area, and I'm just going to sort of pinch the tyre like this, and then it opens up any gaps. And you can kind of see a massive gouge there, so that's probably something's gone in and it's popped out of there. But I can just check that there's nothing still in there, so that when I put it in again it's not going to puncture, and it's a good chance just to actually go around the whole tyre and just see if there's any other little bits that are lodged in your tyre that you don't want to be there. The vulcanising solution has had a while to dry and get tacky. I can peel off the back of my puncture repair kit, puncture repair patch, and try not to get my dirty hands on the clean bit there, and press it down really nice and firmly. Yeah, struggle. You can take this plastic bit off, but I tend to just leave it on because you can. So that's basically it. One important thing to note is it's very difficult to actually test whether this has been successful. If I put a load of air into the tube right now, this is actually going to stretch, and the patch is going to fail. This solution takes 24 hours to properly bond, so you shouldn't test it outside of your tyre less than 24 hours. But what you can do is put it inside your tyre, and because your tyre is a firm surface holding the patch in place, you can pump it in if it's inside your tyre. The plastic, or if you've got a different type of patch that doesn't have the plastic, you can use the chalk stuff that comes in the repair kit. There's only a rough bit on the back, and you just kind of grate the chalk onto it, or sometimes it comes with a little chalk grater, and then you would just do that, and that's just to get any patches of glue that don't have a patch on it, stop it sticking from your tyre. Although I don't want to put loads of air in the tube, I do want to put a little bit just to give it a bit of shape and make it easier to put it all back together. So get the pump on, and just to give it a bit of shape, like that. 2. Together. We've still got a tyre that's just open on one edge, and we want to make sure that we're working on this side. The valve goes in first, so you actually just need to pull that side of the tyre over so you can expose the valve, pop it in, and then pull that over there. Then you should be able to just tuck it in all the way around. And then this bit can be a bit hard, but there are little tips for it again. So we now need to get this second side of the tyre inside the rim. So I'm going to kind of pinch in and press down, and I'm starting near the valve. And then what you can do with the valve is if you actually push it up inside a bit, it gives you a lot more space to push the side of the tyre in. And then I'm going to go all the way around, just pulling like this. Now, often when you get to the end, this last bit is really tricky to get in. So you often end up with this little bit here. First thing to do is now let out the air, any of the air that you put in. And that should give you a little bit extra wiggle room. If you're still finding it really tight here, then what you want to do is squeeze the tyre so that the sort of underneath is sitting right in the middle of the rim. So I'm sort of squeezing it into the middle all the way around, making sure there's no bunch up bit, making sure the valve is nice and loose in this bit. That should give me a little bit more to pop it in. Now again, this is quite a loose fitting tyre, so quite easy to do. But I find even on a very, very stiff one, if you keep going and working around, get a little bit in, and you really want to be working right at the edge that's almost in. You want to be working just there to pull it in. In very rare occasions, you have a tyre that is so tight that like no hands can actually pull it through. I say where possible, do not use tyre levers, because the risk of using tyre levers, if you've got like this, pop, and then they actually pinch the tube and you have to do it all over again. So if you are having to resort to tyre levers, if it's just incredibly stiff, then just do it very cautiously and just do it a little bit at a time at the edge. Try and make sure that you're not pinching the tube on the underside, and just pop a tiny little bit in at a time. And just being careful not to pinch the tube, but where possible. So when you pump it back up, don't pump it up to the maximum pressure, pump it up about halfway, so you can check the bead has not popped out or there's no air bubbles inside. Once you've done that, you're going to put it back in the frame. So you're aiming for the bottom of the small cog to sit on the top of this bit of the chain here. You can pull up the derailleur like this, and it makes it easier to pop it down into place. Press nice and firm to make sure it's in the dropouts. Tighten up the wheel nuts first by hand, and then a little bit with the spanner on each side, and then nice and tight on both sides with the spanner. And just check that it's spinning in the middle of the frame. If you've got an older style bike, you might have a different shape here, and actually on one side this will just be here, on the other side you'll need to slide it, judging by eye, and get it into position. So with a quick release, I like to keep this 90 degrees and then make the adjustments on this side here. So I'm going to tighten it down until there's a bit of resistance, and then should be able to close it nice and firm like that. If this is too tight here, then that's going to become really hard. That's too tight. If it's too loose, you can just knock it open. That's no good. Another thing is to try and get the quick release so that it's facing down or back. Just again prevents it from catching on anything. The bike back round again reaching for the lowest point to the ground, pulling towards me. So with this type of brake, to pull it back together, you just need to yank quite hard on that, push that one in, and then slot that into the gap. Just need to close that back up. Joining these ones back up, I'm grabbing the noodle with my left hand again, pushing the brake on with my right hand, and sometimes you need to really pull this hand so that cable slots into the gap, and just make sure it's seated nice and good like that.
Check the wheel is running freely and the brakes are working.
Give my tyre a final pump up to pressure, if I can. To find the pressure, you look at the tyre wall, and somewhere or other it will say minimum inflation 35, max 65 psi, or something like that. It might say max 115 if it's a road bike. So that's the pressure that you're going to put into the tyre if you've got